We're so glad to have Nelly Attar with us here today. Nelly is a Lebanese Saudi extreme sports athlete, and she was actually the first Arab woman to climb one of the most dangerous mountains in the world, the K2. She's also climbed the Mount Everest, and she was the founder of the first dance school in Saudi, Move. She used to be a mental health professional, and she used to work as a personal trainer as well. She's one of the strongest and bravest women I know, both physically and emotionally. So we're very glad to have you here with us today, Nelly.
Thank you. What an honor it is to be here, and I'm so excited to do this with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So you were born and raised in Saudi, right? Can you tell us a bit what it's like to grow up here?
Sure. Yes, I was born and raised here. I went to an international school. Life here was, if I were to describe it, it was simple. It was conservative, it was safe, and I felt like it was a really nice community. That's how life felt like when I grew up here. We had our weekly routine, we had our friends that we used to see, and it was kind of like a bubble. As I got older, I felt like I wanted to try more things, I wanted to explore more, I wanted to see more, but alhamdulillah, life here was good. Life was simple.
Yeah, it sounds like you grew up in a very safe environment, right?
Yes, we lived in a compound, so that's like an enclosed neighborhood, and we used to always play with the kids in the compound, and so that's, when I think of my childhood, that's what stands out for me.
Yeah, so I listened to a lot of your podcasts, and you mentioned that as a kid you really loved to dance, and that you used to get into trouble for dancing. So I was a dancer as well, and I was on the dance team in China, and we trained with like military precision. Yes. So I'm just very curious to hear what that was like. You wanted to move, and how did people respond?
Honestly, I used to get into trouble a lot, so it's not just about dance.
Just in general.
Just in general, I was so curious. So I just found myself in situations that used to get me into trouble. Luckily, not serious trouble, but just like, the things that I would like were a bit different. I used to draw a lot in class. I would get into trouble for that.
On things that you weren't allowed to draw on, I assume?
Yeah, and then I would also draw comic characters of my teachers or my classmates. But I guess that's how I expressed myself. I loved extracurricular activities. With that, I didn't get into trouble, but in general, I was just very curious. I was rebellious. And with dance, I got into trouble. We almost got into trouble because we performed a dance performance at our school talent show, and I think it was the first time they see a dance performance. And it wasn't just any dance; it was belly dance.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and it was a very funny routine. I don't know what we were thinking at the time, but I'm glad we did it. We gave the audience a show they'll never forget, and we ended up winning the talent show. Although we almost got into trouble.
Were you wearing the outfits too, or?
Our outfits were a bit modest, but yeah, we did have some of the accessories for belly dancers.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
And you still dance today?
I still dance today. Unfortunately, not as much as I'd like to. With the years and with excessive training for the climbs, it was really hard to manage dancing and climbing and all the activities I like. I tried to do that at one point, and I would overtrain. So recently, I would just focus on whatever it is I was doing, and that would usually mean I have to cut back on dancing.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
So I moved to Saudi about a year ago, and one of the first things I did was look up a dance school.
Okay.
And I couldn't find it. So one of my friends, also a global shaper, he was like, "Oh, my friend, she founded the first dance school in Saudi," and I was so impressed and relieved to hear that something like that existed. But just a few years back, and you mentioned there was no female license for dance schools either, right?
For gyms.
For gyms even, yeah. So I'm very curious to hear how that journey got started.
The journey started with my journey in working in sports started while I was working as a therapist. It was the time that I moved back to Saudi. This is in 2013, and the female gyms that existed were only a handful. And the fitness classes that existed were very minimal and lacked diversity. And so I remember thinking at the time, how can I stay active after working hours? What am I going to do? Let me start teaching dance classes. And it just started with an idea. And so from the dance classes, they picked up a lot. I started to teach different audiences, from the hospital I was working at, to my friends, to their parents, compounds, eventually the handful of gyms that existed. And then I started to venture more and more into the world of sports. I got certified in CrossFit, certified in personal training. Eventually, in 2016, I signed with Nike as their first trainer in the kingdom. And I just felt this increasing responsibility that, you know what, I want to start something of my own, something that is not offered. And at the time, bless him, my stepdad offered me his warehouse. He has a warehouse in his office building. And he's like, why don't you use the space? Instead of going from, the gym to the compounds, just filter everything here and start teaching your classes from here and make this space whatever you want it to be. So that space ended up turning into Move. And we eventually took over the entire office building. And we started at a time when female gym licensing didn't exist, but luckily that year, female gym licensing was launched.
Wow.
Yes, and a lot of changes happened in Saudi that year in 2017. Females were now able to drive. Females were now encouraged to join the workforce. So many changes happened right at that time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you feel like there was a big pent-up demand from women that really wanted to go to dance schools?
I think they didn't realize. I think we created the demand. I think there was a lot of excitement around something new, something that falls between sports and entertainment. Because music and dance is entertainment, and you can do that with your friends. And then it's also sports because it's a way for you to move and stay active. So I feel like we created the demand. The demand is there, but people didn't realize. And we just started to have an overflow of people. It started with adults, and then, seniors, and then kids became our largest client segment. And it was amazing. And then we started to partner with the government. There were so many opportunities, and of course there are increasing opportunities today in the world of sports.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned, because you used to be a mental health professional, that you think dance has healing powers almost, where people release their anger and emotions and grief through movements. Do you feel like there was a linkage between you being a former mental health professional and trying to help people through a different way, through movements?
Of course.
Yeah.
Because movement helped me. Movement saved me, and it continues to save me over and over and over again. Today I actually had a pretty bad day. Training really helped. Like training flipped my mood around today. Training and movement continues to be my therapy. And so this is why I advocate for it so much. I come from the field of mental health, and I didn't feel like I was creating as much impact through therapy as much as I started to create impact through sports and classes. And yes, I'm helping people improve their physical health, but I'm also helping them improve their mental health. And it's just amazing, the healing power of sports and movement. It liberates you, it challenges you, it releases endorphins, it channels stress, it improves your self-esteem, it improves your confidence. You feel, I can go on and on and on. But like, if it's a social activity, you bond, you connect.
Yes.
You learn such, invaluable lessons through sports.
Absolutely. Nelly invited me for a hike. I couldn't move my legs for a few days afterwards, but it was very good, very good. So it couldn't have been all smooth sailing, right? Setting up this dance school. Was there any challenges that you experienced along the way?
Of course. I eventually actually closed the dance studio. I chose to close the dance studio not too long ago. We faced a lot of challenges. Initially, I was entering into a world that was new for me. Shifting from psychology to business and running a business and then managing a team. That was especially difficult for me. I think learning how to run a business and manage a business and wear so many different caps as an entrepreneur was the most challenging part for me. And then obviously there were some cultural challenges, but we always respected the culture. Like we tried to present dance in a way that is accepted by people. And at the beginning it was a bit challenging, but that was only for a short period of time. I'd say the biggest challenge for me was switching careers, learning how to manage a business, and then also navigating through the legal aspects of the business since it was all still very new.
Yeah.
Female gym licensing was just launched, so the regulations kept being revised. And then we went through COVID, and that was a whole different ball game. Navigating through that, launching online classes, adapting, and then adapting again, and then falling, and trying to manage my team and lead my team. So there were ongoing challenges, and it was amazing. All these challenges were so helpful and meaningful. I feel like they were there for a reason.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, what did you mean with the cultural challenges? Because there were some women who wore hijab while dancing, right? Was it like a liberating experience for some of them?
So what I mean by cultural challenges is at the beginning, like at the time, music wasn't being played in public spaces here. And dance for women being, I mean, just dance in general was considered unconventional.
Yeah.
So not a lot of people came in with an open mind about the dance classes. And one example is this girl, let's call her Sarah. Sarah came in wanting to dance. She was about 15 years old at the time. She loved dance. She didn't really like to connect with people, but she loved dance. Dance was her therapy and her form of expression. Her mom didn't like the idea that she danced. Her mom didn't support it. But she came into the studio very skeptical, like, what's going on here? Let's see. Because she does, of course, want to make her daughter happy. Her daughter started to come in for those private sessions. She started to lose a lot of weight. Her daughter was obese. She started to lose a lot of weight. Her grades improved a lot. Socially at school, she started to connect with a lot more of the girls.
Wow.
Her self-esteem increased so much. And so she actually started to attend the open classes. And that like was a reflection of how much confidence she had gained. So she started to attend these classes, and her mom was so happy. Her mom was so happy. And the biggest shift happened with her mom. Her mom started to attend the dance classes.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. That's
eventually
amazing.
Because her mom would just be waiting there. And then it got to a point where her mom was like, I want to try this. I want to experience this. And then her mom started to attend the belly dance classes, different sessions we had. And her story will always stay with me. It's why we do what we do. We want to change lives. We want to take people to places they've never been. We want to open this, idea of what sports is. Sports is so dynamic. That's what's beautiful about sports and movement. You can move in so many different ways. And so that's what we wanted to do. Come in, try, see, challenge yourself. Challenge your potential.
Yeah, push yourself out of the comfort zone.
And then work on your happiness as well.
Yeah.
Movement and happiness are interrelated.
Yeah, and also especially if there's no one watching, you can just be as crazy as you want to be.
So this is, tying this back down to cultural challenges, I guess this is what I meant. It's not common, it's unconventional. We were the first introducing dance in a school that was just focused on dance. So that was the challenge only at the beginning, but then by word of mouth, more and more people started to come, more and more people that have never danced started to come. They wanted to explore, they wanted to see. And so, that was just, it was amazing.
Yeah, because I think every time someone steps out of their comfort zone, it's taking a risk, right? And you've done some very risky things. You climbed so a lot of people don't know how dangerous the K2 is, I think, but it has a mortality rate of 25%. So I think it's crazily brave that you were able to do something like that. And I'm just wondering, like, what is your stance on risk taking? It's something that you encourage us to do more often? Or?
Of course, everyone should take risks. The biggest risk is not to take a risk. I know it's a cliche, but it's true. Of course, everyone should take risks. I mean, everything I do in life, I think, has been me taking risks. I closed Move, and that was a risk. Trying something new is a risk. Being here now, us doing this is a risk. So of course, take a risk. Yeah.
Do you feel like as women we are less encouraged to take risks compared to men?
I think actually statistics and research shows that women are less inclined to take risks. Women are more risk aversive in general than men are. In businesses, women are less likely to apply to different roles, to apply for a promotion than men are. So yes, I mean, this is what the research has shown.
Yeah.
And I hope that by doing what I do, I encourage more women to take risks.
Yeah, I think you do have that impact, yes. Because you're showing young women, what's possible. And the opposite side of risk is the fear, right? And death is probably one of the most extreme things. And you faced death. Like, I'm just, what was that like?
I mean, facing very extreme being in very extreme environments, it's scary, of course. There's a lot of fear. It's, I don't think fear ever leaves us, but you have to know how to work with fear. You can feel fear and still do things. And the more you work with fear, the less debilitating it becomes. It's still going to be there, but it doesn't control you anymore. You manage fear. But of course, there are so many situations on K2 where I felt very alert, very, very anxious, very scared. Rock fall, moving in a storm, seeing dead bodies, hearing of one of our friends passing away. And on K2, it was just like, it was like navigating through a PlayStation game. It's super exposed and you have to be very careful with your steps. And then there's also rock fall. So, I mean, being very careful with your steps is one. Making sure the rope doesn't snap is another thing. And then also avoiding rock fall, constant rock fall, is another factor. And so you're constantly on your toes, super aware of everything that's happening, so afraid. Yeah, I mean, this is what it's like. And I have to say, what helps me is faith. What helps me is faith. I recite a few suwar, a few mantras, and it really helps.
Yeah, I think for most of us, it's very hard to imagine how hard it was to train for such a thing, and also being on, climbing the K2 itself. It's really shocking to hear. Like, you saw dead bodies while you were climbing.
I mean, you see that on Everest. We saw more on Everest than we do on K2. But just on K2, I felt like everything in me was heightened. My fear, my anxiety, my excitement, everything was heightened. Because that line between life and death is, I mean, so fine on K2. And so when we do see, you know, a dead body, or we do see someone injured, your fear is just super elevated.
Wow. Yeah, you also mentioned one of your teammates lost a toe or something like that.
Oh, okay, no. One of my friends lost 5 of his fingers a season before on Broad Peak, Fahad. He's an amazing climber, Qatari climber. He's climbed Everest, climbed Lhotse, Broad Peak, super inspiring, and he continues to climb. So after he lost his fingers on Broad Peak, he climbed K2. And that was in the region. I mean, Broad Peak is facing K2, so he lost his fingers, and it took a couple of days for rescue to come and get him from base camp. So, and so unfortunately he lost his fingers, but he's doing amazing things in continuing his sport and campaigning for people with disabilities. Yeah, very inspiring person.
So you think it's all still worth it, right? The risk that you take against the rewards that you receive?
Of course, it's worth it, but it's calculated risk. It's worth it, yes, but it's not worth dying for. So if I am in a situation while I'm climbing where there's a doubt that we will come back, I will go back. I will not climb higher. So yes, it's worth taking the risk, but you have to know when to take a step back. And you have to know when to say no.
So you know your limits and your boundary. And
I'm learning.
Yeah,
I'm learning.
Yeah.
And there's a team with me. It's the teamwork. There's a team of amazing guides, amazing assistant guides, and they're constantly looking for weather forecasts, updates, what's happening with the other teams. And so they collectively come up with the decisions of what we do.
Yeah. I think just your adventures on the K2 is enough for an entire episode, because you mentioned hunting animals, because you don't bring the food or water with you, of course, right?
So they don't hunt animals. They take the goats with us.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What about the yaks? Or
the yaks?
Yeah, they brought the yaks, and then you have to melt the ice to drink the water, right?
Yeah. So I mean, this happens on any mountain where we melt. We have to get snow, we melt the snow, we drink the water, and the higher you go, honestly, the nastier it gets. You think the higher you go, the cleaner the snow is, but there's only certain places where you can fetch for snow on the campsites, and over time, a lot of waste starts to accumulate, so you get a lot of things in your water.
And you got very sick, right?
I got very sick on K2, I got sick on Everest too, I got sick on K2, and it's expected. I mean, on altitude, your immunity is compromised. You're moving so much every day for an extended period of time. Your immunity will be compromised. And add to that contaminated water, maybe contaminated food. So I did get a stomach bug on K2 from the first day. You know, and that dragged out for a week. And then I got a cold, and we don't know if it was COVID.
And you were climbing throughout?
Yeah, you don't stop.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And then I got a cold. But yeah, luckily, by the time it was the summit rotation, by the time we attempted the summit, I felt okay.
Yeah. How do you find the discipline for training or pushing yourself through situations like that?
You have to want it so bad. You have to want it so bad. If you don't want it so bad, it'll be really hard for you to even persevere through the training. The training in and of itself is a climb. Leading up to K2, my training was insane. And so when I'm on the climb, I enjoy it. I've trained my body to be here, my body's prepared. Now I get to enjoy the scenery, I get to enjoy being with the team, I get to enjoy all these experiences that I'll never get to probably experience again. But yeah, when I'm there and we're going through really hard times, it's my faith that helps me. It's my drive to achieve this specific goal. And I think I've trained myself to not give up. I've trained myself through the years to not give up. But again, if I have to take a step back, I'll take a step back. There's a difference.
Yeah, but where does this drive come from? Because you say you need to want it really badly, right? And your goal is to be the first Arab woman to climb the K2, or what was the ultimate drive behind this?
The drive behind climbing K2, it's similar to the drive behind most of my climbs and most of my other sports, my other sports events. It's me wanting to challenge myself, try something new, see where I can take my body, put this goal that I can work towards. And it's just amazing. The process is amazing. And K2 was different. I mean, K2 is another 8,000 meter peak, but it's much harder than Everest. And I just felt like I wanted to try. I especially wanted to try also because no one from the region had climbed K2.
Yeah.
And yeah, I believed with the level of training and preparation and experience I had that it could be done.
Yeah. Were there moments in which you really felt like you failed at doing something? Or what would be defined as a failure for you? Because you mentioned setting goals for yourself, and sometimes we're not always able to achieve those goals, right? How do you deal with that in those moments?
I think failure, I've been through a lot of failed attempts, and I think a lot of that comes down to external circumstances that we can't control. So rather, the way I see it is, I did my best, and that's where we got to. Great. There are so many other things in the journey that I can take away from this experience. It's not just the destination, it's the journey leading up to the destination. But some other times, I feel like I wasn't able to get to the destination because of my preparation. And so then again, that's also a lesson for me on what to do better next time. So for example, while we were training for Everest, we attempted a climb in Kyrgyzstan. I wasn't prepared, I wasn't trained. I didn't take acclimatization properly or seriously, and I got very sick on that climb. And needless to say, we didn't summit. I came back from that mountain. Cognitively, I felt delayed. I got super sick, but that taught me so much about what not to do and what to do in order to be ready for Everest.
Yeah. Can you tell me about the moments when you finally reached the Everest or the K2? How did it feel like?
Both of them are different. Everest, I was a bit scared and overwhelmed. There were a lot of people. There's a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait to come back down. I was happy I did it, but I think I was more afraid. K2, it was one of the best moments of my life. K2 was one of the best moments of my life. The year before was a very, very difficult year for me. I had lost my dad, Allah yarhamu, and he was one of the biggest inspirations for me to do K2. And so I felt like he was climbing with me. I felt like he was climbing with me literally every step of the way. And I felt the surge of energy on the way to the summit. I just felt like I was getting stronger and stronger and stronger as the days went by. It's amazing. It's so hard to describe. And so reaching this moment, making history for my country and for the region. It's not about me anymore. It's not about my family. It's much bigger. That moment to me was one of the best moments of my life, I have to say. I spent 30 minutes crying on the summit. I just had to take it in. Yeah. 30 minutes crying and then another 30 minutes taking pictures and videos. It was incredible.
Yeah, I also believe that those that passed away are still with us, and his spirit is with you.
Yes,
yeah, because I think you mentioned that your first hike was with your dad, right? What was the hike like with him?
I mean, he used to take me on hikes when I was a kid. We used to go walking in the desert. I remember these moments because he would encourage my curiosity. I would talk about the bugs and the rocks and the sand, and he would just ask me a lot of questions. He encouraged that curiosity in me. And my first mountain climb was with him in Kenya when I was 17. He took me to Kenya on an adventure trip. At the time, he lived in Kenya. And so he was like, let's do Mount Kenya as well. We didn't make it to the summit. We got super sick. He got hypothermia. But it was amazing. I still loved the experience. I still loved the challenge of it. And something stayed with me. Something after that trip stayed with me. And I still have this admiration and love and respect for mountains. And I truly hope I continue to climb for the rest of my life.
Yeah. But so you actually started quite late then. Because I would assume it takes years of training. You have to start as a kid or something.
No, yeah, I mean,
but yeah, so anyone can decide to do anything.
Yes, I mean 17 moment. And then that was it. And then my first multi-day trek that was about a week long after Mount Kenya was Kilimanjaro, and that was when I was 25. And then at 29 I did Everest, and at 32 I did K2.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of big steps every year. But I stayed consistent. That's the key. I don't stop. I build year by year by year by year.
Yeah, I imagine after climbing the Mount Everest, you there's nothing that you can't do anymore, right? It's like you tell yourself, I've done the Everest. This I can also do.
No, there's a lot I can't do.
Okay, what are those things?
I can't cook.
You can't?
No, I can't. I can't focus for long periods of time.
Oh, yes.
There's a lot of things I can't do.
Yeah. You mentioned you have ADHD, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Because in one of your interviews, you mentioned that you struggle with depression as well when you were 23 or 24.
I mean, I think I've had my fair share of mental health challenges, like many people do. And I think this is what encouraged me to study psychology. So I went through depression actually when I was a kid, when my parents were getting divorced.
Yeah.
And then towards the end of high school, I had anxiety, major anxiety. And then at university, I developed panic attacks when I was doing my master's. And I had to deal with that for 6 months. Ironically, I was doing my master's in psychology, in therapy, and here I am, suffering from panic attacks. And and I don't know if I'll ever, go through any of these dips for a prolonged period of time, but it could happen.
No, I imagine if you've studied psychology and you were a psychologist, maybe it helps you that you were on the other side of the patient, or you know what they might be going through, right? But
yes.
So were you able to help yourself better as well, be your own psychologist?
Yes, and it took time. It actually took time. So this is what a lot of people I think struggle with. It takes time. So my panic attacks, I think I was able to overcome them properly within a year. It took about a year. And then I had a few episodes on K2. I hadn't had panic attacks for 10 years.
Wow.
And then I had them on K2. But I remember the breathing techniques, the visualization, having to stop everything and slow down. On K2, it's much harder to do. When you're in a normal environment, it's much easier. But on K2, when I'm sitting and climbing, we're on the way to the summit, it was a lot harder to do, but I had to do it in order to just be able to slow down my heart rate, breathe again, feel like I'm a bit more balanced, and then carry on climbing.
Yeah. So maybe shifting away from the dark topics, I think in the few interactions that I've had with you, it was so noticeable that you want to let other people shine. At our birthday parties, you insisted I blow out the candle and we share a birthday, right? So I think that was something that was so inspiring about you, that you want to give other people the spotlight. And I know you don't like to talk about yourself in a very braggy way and talk about all your accomplishments. I'm just wondering, what is your long-term aspirations in terms of your purpose in life? Like,
I would love to continue living life fully. I think purpose changes from stage to stage. So inshallah, God willing, I continue to live life fully. I continue to create an impact. I want to create more of an impact. I want to have a family one day, inshallah. I want to climb more. I want to relaunch a business. Again, there are so many things I want to do. Many, many things. Inshallah, launch a charity one day.
And charity and what?
I've always been interested in wildlife protection, but we'll see. Most of what I do now in terms of charity work is with refugees. So we'll see when the time comes. I'd love to write a book as well. So yeah, there are so many things I want to do.
As I was doing research on you, there was one episode on the Mo Show where you were talking about your father passing, and it was only 2 weeks afterwards. And it's actually very painful for me to listen to that as well. And I remember thinking, if she were on my show, I would be crying. And I think it's so brave that you are able to talk about these things. And it's not very common, I think, because what was your decision behind that, to go on a show and speak about such a personal thing?
To honor my dad. My dad loved my interviews, my podcasts. He was my biggest fan. And I wanted to talk of him. I wanted to speak of him. That's what helped me heal. That's how I'm able to talk of him today. So it felt right for me. I was actually in Jeddah at the time for the golf tournament. And they pulled me aside asking me, do you want to be part of this show? They didn't know that I was going through grief. They didn't know that I was in a very, very vulnerable and delicate state. Yeah. But I said, okay. And they're like, oh, okay, great. Did they send you the questions? I'm like, what questions? Nothing was prepared. But I think actually vulnerability is a great thing to share with people. That's how you connect with people. And I was very vulnerable that moment. And it just felt right to be there, to talk with Mo, talk about my dad, speak of life, connect.
Yeah. Do you feel like when you're sharing your vulnerabilities that it inspires other people? You've been able to help other people through grief as well?
I hope so. I really hope so. A lot of people helped me through grief. Seeing how they overcame their grief, seeing how they managed really inspired me and it helped me. So that's what I hope to do. And that's why I regularly go back to that topic and regularly speak of grief. I mean, I still have my dips. Last night I was crying about my dad. I missed him. I'm crying.
I'm going to cry as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now it's a bit more contained. Yeah, I mean, it's normal. Grief changes, it never goes away. Grief changes and you adapt to it, but it never goes away. And at the beginning, the way I see it is it's like the ocean. The waves are so turbulent, they just go crashing down and back up and crashing down. Then they eventually level off. But of course, I still miss him. I still think of him a lot.
Yeah. Do you think he would have been very proud of you?
I hope so. Yeah, inshallah. I hope so.
Yeah, I think so.
Inshallah.
Yeah. I think, myself, I do struggle with showing vulnerability. Or I try to as much as I can.
You just did.
Yeah.
You just did.
But I know, like, at work, it's not what is expected of us or what is considered professional, right? So we're supposed to contain this as much as we can and fake your way through. And I think I'm hoping that this is something that will eventually change as we can be human. Yeah.
Well, I think you learn. I was not very vulnerable. I was not someone that liked to show emotions. This is not too long ago. Actually, right before my dad passed away, I feel like I didn't experience a lot of the emotions that I experience now. Going through grief made me so much more compassionate, made me so much more connected to my emotions. Now, any little thing can make me cry. I'm super sensitive now. It's not it's a blessing and it's a curse. Yeah. But I mean, now I'm a lot more able to share vulnerability, and it's strength, it's courage. Saying, I don't know, I'd love to learn, but I don't know. Can you teach me? I don't think I remember how to do this. That's vulnerability on a mountain. Instead of pretending like you know how and then ending up in a position where it's like life and death, you know?
Yeah.
Vulnerability also is saying that I'm not okay today. I need some space. I need to take care of myself. Vulnerability is crying. And that's what makes us human.
Yeah, I completely agree that it's a bit of a strength and a weakness, because I think, especially, I always told myself I can't be a psychologist, because if I listen to other people's problem, I'll probably be like, oh my God, you're so, like, I'm so sorry this happened to you. And it's not what a psychologist is supposed to do, right? You're supposed to keep it together so you can help the other person. You need to be strong in order to do that.
And you have to have boundaries,
Yes, and I was wondering, like, how do you maintain that balance between empathizing with the other person but still staying strong enough to help them?
I'm learning. Because now I feel like I'm on the other end. I feel like I'm a bit more sensitive. Now when I'm going through something, it takes me a few days to make peace with it. Previously, I felt a lot more disconnected with my emotions. So if I went through something, second day I'd be okay. And I think that's what made me, pretty good at that field, because I did detach. Now I'm trying to learn how to balance that out. I'm trying to learn how to let go. And I'm trying to accept my feelings as well, because feelings will come and feelings will go, and if you resist them, they will stay trapped. You have to allow them to pass, understand them, make peace with them. I know not all feelings are great, but they will pass. That's the great thing, is that they will pass. So I'm just trying to always remind myself of that and learn the art of letting go, not being attached. And I practice that through simple things. A book that I read, I don't need anymore. I'll donate it. Although I love this book and I have notes, I don't need it anymore. Why keep it? Clothes as well. If I'm not wearing this top, I like it, but I'm not wearing it, someone else can benefit from this top. It's small practices like this that will actually help you let go on a bigger scale.
Yeah. Do you meditate? No. But I know you like Wim Hof, right? And he has this meditation technique.
I mean, I pray.
Yeah.
I pray. I try to pray 5 times a day as much as I can, and that is my form of meditation. Otherwise, I try to sit still. I think sitting still for me would be in an icy environment. That's how.
The ice baths.
Ice baths.
Yeah.
I just did one today before coming in.
Ah, okay. Yeah. And you're able to clear out your minds, or?
Yeah, I needed it. I needed to be in the water and remind myself that I'm calm and I'm still, and nothing can interfere with that. Calm and still, and nothing can interfere with that. You have to keep thinking that when you're in the water, because it's a very uncomfortable environment. Yeah. One day you'll do it with me.
Yes, let's do it. I think Nelly is pushing me out of my comfort zone as well. Is there anything in particular that you're praying for these days?
Clarity. On what direction I want to take next, on what my work will look like, and I'm praying for more opportunities at work. And I'm praying as well to, inshallah, heal from my injuries so that I'm able to jump back into full force with my training.
Yes, yeah. Is the 3rd highest mountain now your goal, or when your injuries are healed?
We'll see. Next year. I don't want to think of climbing this year. If I'm going to climb this year, it would be to lead a group up a climb, but none of these big mountains for this year.
Yeah. Have you ever jumped out of an airplane? Because I know you climb on things, but
yes.
Yes? Yeah. What was that like?
You gave a pretty good, what was it like? There's that fear before you jump, but once you jump, you free fall, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
I would do it again, maybe. I enjoyed it. It was nice. It was nice. I enjoy climbing more.
Yes. No, okay, I did skydiving as well, and that's why it describes the moments right before you jump and you see other people fall out of the airplane. That's the scariest part.
Yeah, and then once you jump,
and once you're falling, it's just there's no fear anymore.
It's liberating and it's freedom.
Yeah, I think it's a very good metaphor for taking risks.
Absolutely.
Even before this interview, I was so nervous, and then when we're talking, it's just natural. It's
for sure.
Scary.
Fear. A lot of times what we fear is not nearly as scary as it will be. Like, we fear this outcome, scary, the worst case scenario, but actually it's never usually that bad. Even grief. The worst fear for me, the biggest fear in my mind used to be like the passing of someone close to me. How will I ever survive? How can I live a day without them?
Yeah.
Well, subhanAllah, God gives you strength you didn't realize you had. And when you actually go through it, you realize life goes on. Life moves on. Life goes on. Yes, you're always going to have, you know, that grief with you, but you don't realize how strong you are. You don't realize that you can handle the situation.
So, having achieved all these amazing things, have you ever had someone approach you and say that you were their role model? And what's it like to be a role model now?
I don't know. I don't know. Normal, I guess. I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, I do have people that come and say they didn't realize that this could be possible. They saw me work hard towards something I really wanted to achieve, and now that's inspired them to work towards their dream. They didn't realize, you know, how much you can do in the outdoors, how amazing it is to move. That's like, those are the kind of messages I receive, and it's very uplifting. That inspires me in turn to continue doing what I do.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, if you look back on the little girl that was a little bit rebellious and always got into trouble, is there any piece of advice that you would have given yourself when you were younger? Maybe not the little Nelly, but yeah.
She's still inside me. She still like directs everything I do. Trust the process. I'll tell her, trust the process. When things get hard, trust the process. When you want to strive for something big, trust the process. Put in the work, but trust the process. When something doesn't work out, trust the process.
Yeah.
So I think I would really try to absorb that. Because many times, even today, when I find myself in a very challenging circumstance, or when I feel like this is unknown to me, I don't know where I'm going to go, I don't know what I'm going to do, trust the process, do the work, and, you know, allow the magic to unfold. This is what I kept telling myself on K2, and it unfolded in a much better way than I had ever anticipated. I put in the work. I never gave up. Every rejection was a redirection. I didn't take no for an answer. I worked damn hard. But I also had to remind myself, trust the process. Because you're going to get dips. You're going to be demotivated. You're going to feel lost at times. So I would like to say that to my younger self.
That's okay to have those dips as well. Yeah.
Yes, of course, you're going to go through dips. That's life. Ups and downs and ups and downs. Success and life itself are not linear.
Yeah.
Just trust the process. Put in the work and trust the process.
Yeah. Do you think you ever expected that you would be the first Arab woman to climb the K2?
I don't think I ever expected that I would be climbing high mountains. I mean, I'd do something different.
Yeah.
I feel like I always kind of stood out from when I was a kid. My name was different. My hair was different. My attention span was different. My interests in class were different. So I just felt like I never really fit in. And so a part of me always thought, I'm going to do something different. I know I'm going to be a bit different in my life. So I guess, climbing is one of those things.
I think everything that makes you different eventually becomes our trademark.
Yeah.
Right?
If you know how to use them to your advantage, yes.
Absolutely. I love your hair.
I love it too, but not always. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's just in general such a blessing that I met you. So thank you for coming here.
Thank you. It's a blessing I met you, and thank you to the entire team, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.